All right.
Okay, should we let everyone in?
Is everybody ready? All right.
Whoop, whoop, let's get it started.
Oh,
Okay, here we go. I'm admitting all.
thanks.
Oh, there's Pasquale.
All right. Hello, everybody. Are we ready to get rolling here, Susan? All right. Welcome, everyone, to our special education town hall event with AUSD staff. Before I start, I wanted to let you know, you probably received a notice on this, but this Zoom session is being recorded. Again, welcome. We are thrilled you are here. My name is Heather Paget. I'm the chair of ASPED Families, which is a parent education and support group that's sponsored by the Alameda PTA Council. We've been holding this event each school year for about the last 7 years, if not longer. I don't have records beyond that. It's an opportunity to hear from AUSD leadership about their priorities and approaches on topics relevant to special education, and to ask questions, share concerns, challenges, and identify potential solutions. As you know, AUSD Central Office has a number of new leaders in our district in both special education and general education, and we're excited to have them here tonight. I want to welcome AUSD Superintendent Scuderi, Dr. Randhir Bains, our new Senior Director of Special Education. Also joining us tonight are Yvonne Wright, Dr. Vernon Walton, Shamar Edwards, and Kirsten Zazo, and they're each going to briefly introduce themselves in a moment. I want each of you to know that I want each of them to know that we appreciate their willingness to be here and to engage directly with our community tonight. One new thing this year, I'm thrilled to be joined here tonight on camera and off by friends and colleagues from Alameda Mosaic. Alameda Mosaic is co-hosting our event tonight. Caroline Broussard, co-founder of the newly launched Mosaic, will say a few words in a minute about her group. But I'd like to say that while our two organizations have slightly different missions, we have overlapping membership, and we both bring together previously isolated sectors of the community to share information and support, and to work together to address common challenges and lift up all our children. So it's great to have them here, and I hope you'll join me in welcoming them in just a minute. Let's see, our basic agenda for tonight is to hear briefly from Superintendent Scuderi, followed by remarks from Dr. Bains. Then we'll do some quick introductions of our other staff and move to the Q&A portion of the evening. Our goal is to have the better part of an hour for Q&A. And lastly, I may mention this again at the end, but I want to say it here just in case we lose people during the session. I'm the outgoing chair of ASPED Families, and this event represents my last official duty. Unfortunately, we do not have a new chair identified. We're actively looking, so if you have any interest or know someone who might, please let me know. Please let any of us here know. It provides a great opportunity to get to know our district and community better. I actually encourage having a couple of folks chair, so if you and a friend or a parent of a classmate could do it together. I will post a link to some information on the group and the chair role in the chat. Please consider volunteering. The beauty of this organization, ASPED Families, is that the chair and the advisory board have great latitude to shape its activities. There's a lot of need in our community, I think you'll agree, and so many opportunities. And I will still be around to help out as needed. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline Broussard.
Thank you so much, Heather. Hi, everyone. As Heather mentioned, I'm Caroline Broussard, one of the starting members of Alameda Mosaic. Really, really pleased to have the opportunity to partner with ASPED Families to present this town hall to you tonight. Excuse me, I want to give A special shout out to my Alameda Mosaic colleagues, Danielle Poole, Anna Johnson, and Nidra Barnes LaRue for their help in putting on this event tonight. Really appreciate you ladies and all the hard work that you've done. Just to say a few words about Alameda Mosaic, for those of you who don't know. Alameda Mosaic is essentially a group, an entity that has been formed by families for families. The mission of Alameda Mosaic is to provide a forum for families of African American, Black, and multi-ethnic students to share their voices, become more knowledgeable about district resources and how to navigate the complex educational landscape in order to advocate more effectively for their students. One of our many goals is to create a supportive environment that uplifts families, promotes their healing, and focuses on equity, inclusion, and ensuring equal access to high-quality educational opportunities for African American, Black, and multi-ethnic students. The multi-ethnic piece is critically important because we have quite a number of mixed-race families in our district, and we want to make sure they have a home with us in Alameda Mosaic. So thank you again, Heather, for the opportunity to have Alameda Mosaic partner on this event. And thank you so much for everyone who's in attendance tonight. And a special thanks to Dr. Bains for leading tonight's event, as well as the rest of AUSD leadership who are present tonight. Really appreciate your support and partnership. Thank you so much.
Great. And we're going to turn it over to Dr. Scuderi from there. Excuse me, Superintendent Scuderi.
The doctor's next.
You take that.
He's coming.
Okay.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate parents giving their time. We know that the last 18 to 24 months has had a particularly strong impact on our families who have students with special needs. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that up front, acknowledge the fact that we have a lot of difficult challenges ahead and tough things to talk about. I do, however, want to balance at the outset those challenging conversations with some acknowledgement of some of what I see as some tangible progress that our special ed team has made over the past few years. Not to paint an overly rosy picture, but again, just to acknowledge that there has been some tangible movement. As many of you know, last year we completed the cycle and cleared all of the non-compliant findings of the 1920, the school year 1920 comprehensive review. Our staff reconvened over 40 IEPs, really took a look at error patterns in those corrective actions that we were tasked with by CDE, held 8 professional learning sessions and additional meetings in order to really kind of holistically have our staff address those patterns that needed corrected per those findings. We have our staff, I should say, in special ed has begun to expand the concept of co-teaching at the secondary level. While we did experience delays in getting our learning hubs off the ground, I'm pleased to say that we still were one of the first districts in Alameda County to open those hubs to provide services for our students with disabilities last spring. We invested in additional programming this summer on both the mild, moderate, and moderate to severe side. And we are currently in conversations with our SELPA director this afternoon, being acknowledged for some of the work that's been done around autism support in the district, and are contemplating and pursuing becoming a demonstration site for a program with the acronym CAPTAIN, which is the California Autism Professional Training and Information Network. So again, not to paint an overly rosy picture, but I think some of our difficult conversations and future challenges need to be balanced with some of the acknowledgement of the work staff's done over the past 2 years. Broadly, on the fiscal side, and I know there's been questions about this, special education constitutes about $32 million of our annual operating budget. So that's about 25% of our roughly $125 million budget here in AUSD. That's a combination of state and federal revenue, but the lion's share of that, the biggest chunk of that, is a district general fund contribution in the neighborhood of $23 million. So special education costs are tough. It is money well spent. It is money that we always want to use creatively and effectively to support students. But broadly, you can see the percentage of expenses that our special ed budget is relative to our overall operating budget. Our personnel expenses in special education are in line with state and county averages, but we spend far more as a district on non-personnel expenses. That's legal costs, settlements, non-public services, non-public staffing, et cetera. So that is an ongoing process, a process that we're engaged in to look at that. In our county, only Berkeley and Piedmont this year or last year have higher non-personnel expenses in special education than AUSD. On a more optimistic note, I will tell you that we have received just over $660,000 in learning recovery funds, federal dollars, to be allocated towards special ed, and our staff will talk either tonight or at a very future date about the developing plans on how to spend that. Elsewhere, we are slated to receive about $147,000 in funds that are to support alternative dispute resolution. So those are funds that there are very specific constraints on, according to our SELPA director, and those funds will be spent on outreach to the community and then specific trainings for both our staff and our parent community to make communication during the IEP process, more effective. So two optimistic financial notes. I would also just say that we know that staffing right now is having an impact on many of our families and on much of our staff. The shortage in paraprofessionals, bus drivers, food services workers, and custodial employees is absolutely real across the county. I was on a meeting with our superintendent's council this morning, and many in our region are feeling the pain. We are working on that. I talked to Tim Irwin today in HR about where we are. So I don't have any magic bullet solutions for that tonight, but I want to acknowledge that that is an issue, and it's impacting not only our families, but our staff who rely on that paraprofessional support. So with that, I will adhere to the feedback of less staff talk time and more time to engage with the community and leave it there. And I guess hand it over at this point to Dr. Bains or back to Heather. Sorry.
Bains. Dr. Bains, you're up. Thanks, Superintendent Scuderi.
Sure.
Heather, I'm going to project my screen.
Okay.
And okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's nice to see so many participants in the town hall meeting. I have to acknowledge ASPED and members of Alameda Mosaic. We've been talking about this opportunity now for a few months, actually, since July, and to see it materialize is really a pleasure. So thank you to your leadership for making this happen. I want to first thank you to our parents. I want to acknowledge the hardships that you have experienced. It's been a tough, very, very tough 18 months going through the whole emergency condition, COVID impact, the emotional toll that this has taken, the educational toll that this has taken, has been unprecedented. And I acknowledge all the hard work, all the sacrifices that you've made. And I want to applaud you and thank you for everything that you do. And I so look forward to working with you as we advance our programs and services to meeting the needs of our students. What I'd like to do is to share just a bit about me. Some of this information I shared at the Meet the Directors last week, but I'd like to share a bit more because it's information that has founded my belief system, which has defined my leadership and my outlook on special education and in life. So these are my credentials, folks. And on the right side of the screen, you'll see the experiences that I've had for the past 25 years. I've had the good fortune to have served as a school psychologist, a counselor, working in curriculum instruction, assessment, professional development, child welfare and attendance, English learner services, etc., etc. I'm sharing that with you because it allows me to see how all the tentacles in education connect. That's really, really important because special education should never be seen as something operating in isolation. It should always be seen as interconnected to everything that you're seeing on the screen right here. What I want to share with you next are some impactful experiences that define my belief system. And I want to start off first with that top quadrant in the top left. As I shared last week, learning for me was a horrific experience. I couldn't tell left from right. I had a horrible time reading. Writing was a huge challenge. I did stutter. I had motor coordination problems and I couldn't spell. So very early on, I learned that if you want to succeed, you have to have help. In my case, I didn't get the help that I needed. So I found other ways to keep myself entertained, and that was to get into mischief. That's where I found success. And that's where I thrived. What I didn't get was what I needed. Like many children who are English learners and who have a horrible time staying focused, I went to that special room. And I remember all the kids, as I walked out of class to go to that special room, they looked at me and I realized that I was very, very different from them. I'm sharing that with you because in a child's mind, when you know you can't do something, it does impact how you see yourself, it impacts how you feel, and it impacts your self-confidence. Self-confidence, your self-expectations, and the expectations of others determine what you're going to experience and the level of achievement that you're going to attain. That's really important for me to share with you because I can relate to many of our children who do have specific learning disabilities and have been struggling. I know what that struggle is like, and I also recognize the importance of providing the necessary support so a child can succeed. I'm showing you the right top quadrant where you see some offices. Those were impactful times for me because those were actual pictures of race riots that were right in my neighborhood. We walked straight through them. We saw pretty horrific things. We saw law enforcement officers allowing us to walk into a race riot where my cousins were beaten. This is a 9-year-old child. Why am I sharing that with you? To show the impact of what happens when a system doesn't work for you. It leaves an indelible scar. Then we get down to the lower bottom quadrant where you see some colorful youth. I had many run-ins with them as an adolescent, members of the National Front. Again, when your self-worth is beaten to a pulp and you don't have a system that supports you, you don't believe that you can succeed. When you need the help the most, a system is designed to keep you where you are. These kinds of youth would victimize in front of school administrators who would do nothing to intervene. That's a system that keeps you where you're at. I'm highlighting that because I know what it's like to work in a system that's designed to keep you where you are. To break out of that, you have to do something very different. You have to start thinking differently, and we're going to get to that here. The lower left quadrant shows the many wonderful experiences I had working in the fields, picking grapes, driving a tractor, working in a convenience store from age 9 until 26. I have to tell you, I met a lot of very, very interesting people. And I'm very glad for those experiences because they help me understand there are all kinds of people in this wonderful world of ours, and we have to treat every single one of them with dignity and respect because they all have a story to tell. So these are experiences that have defined the beliefs that I want to share with you. For me, it's critically important to see that all students are gen ed students. Some happen to have learning disabilities. It's very important to me that we create a system that supports students with IEPs with the opportunity to succeed, and that the needs of students should not have to fit the system, but should drive to mold and shape the system. So this is a visual of my approach to meeting the needs of our students. We start with the mission and the vision of our organization. That, based upon the previous work, has created the strategic plan and the special education plan. From that, goals and action steps were created. These should drive the system. So our students should not have to fit any system. We create a system that fits their needs. And that is critical to moving forward because we have to think differently, we have to act differently, and we have to start generating solutions in a very different way. I shared with you previously, high expectations. High expectations trump disability through high achievement anytime. The research is very clear about that. Disability does not mean that you are doomed for life. What dooms somebody for life is a lowered expectation. So for me, it's critical to teach our students and our staff. We all hold ourselves to a very high standard of expectation for all of the students that we serve. Another belief that I hold very dear to myself is that communication and partnership with parents is critical to success of the students we serve. Here's the bottom line. We can't do this alone as a district. We have to partner. We have to collaborate with our parents to help all of our students succeed. And I truly look forward to that. The last belief here I want to just share with you, and we're going to circle back to this. And that is that the success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal by taking imperfect action to forming the habit of doing things that you just don't like to do. I'm going to give that a context based upon the information that I wish to share with you now. The top 3 priorities for me are parent-community relations. Number 2, compliance with special education law, and creating a system that allows our students the opportunity to succeed. So let's talk first about parent-community relations. One of the initiatives that we're going to be moving forward with is holding a family evening at least 4 times a year. And this is for our new families that are going through the assessment process. And this is largely to help our families to navigate the special education process so that our families do feel supported. They do have a strong sense of understanding of how to navigate the world of special education, and are able to build very strong positive relationships with other parents and also with our special education staff. The other thing that I want to do, and we're going to be moving on this next item fairly quickly, and that is to begin to hold special education listening sessions.
Dr. Bains, I think you're muted. Can you unmute yourself again? There you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, so we are holding listening sessions These are theme-based listening sessions, and what I'm thinking of is monthly listening sessions that are solutions outcomes based. And some topics that I'm thinking of right now include communication, parent engagement, and parent trainings. And I look forward to the opportunity to survey our parents on these three topics themselves and where they would like additional support. So more information will be coming out on the listening sessions. And of course, I certainly look forward to working with our partners in Alamedamosaic and ASPED to making that happen. The other initiatives that I want to share with you is the creation and implementation of a post-IEP survey. It's very important to me to know what your experience was, what our parents' experiences have been after an IEP. Did you receive your parental rights? Were you involved in the IEP? Was your input considered? So on and so forth. So we're working on this. And again, I look forward to the survey results so that we can target our support according to where the needs are presenting to better improve the supports we provide to our parents. And the other initiative is to, in collaboration with our parents, to continue to work on a parent resource network that allow our parents the opportunity to have a sense of community and interaction with other parents so that we have a community in which parents can support parents and allow my team to also provide the necessary support and interact with our parent community, obviously. The other item is to create a protocol that allows easy, quick communication between parent, caregivers, and service providers. I don't want to see prolonged delays in anyone getting back to our parents on any matters related to the special education services that are being provided. With respect to compliance with law, we are moving forward with implementing what's called an IEP minutes tracker. We want to ensure that should any parent with an IEP ask, are the services being implemented, and please show me, we want to be able to show all the service minutes that have been provided. We will be conducting special education self-reviews at each school. We are in process of scheduling site-based SPED team trainings on their specific roles and responsibilities. And part of those trainings will include how to monitor IP timelines for compliance and how to monitor assessment timelines for compliance. And specifically for students who are African American and are being considered for other health impaired, we're going to be monitoring those assessments in particular. I want to review those assessment reports before any child is labeled as other health impaired. The other big item is systemic opportunities to succeed. Here's what I want us to see. Right now, we have ambulances at the bottom of the cliff and the fence is broken. I want us to bring the ambulances to the top of the cliff and fix the fence. So for me, that means two things. Number one, it means a very strong response to intervention and NTSS framework. And we're beginning that with our program manager, Ms. Chandni Stanley, who is working with Cassie Ferguson in strengthening the cost and SST mechanisms to ensure that any child that is referred for special education, all interventions have been tried, and there is evidence to show the outcomes of those interventions. The second component to systemic opportunity to succeed is teaching and learning. During the second semester of this school year, we are going to be transitioning to looking at how we provide service to our students. That will begin by going into our classrooms and looking at all the good things that our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our special education staff are doing to meeting the needs of our students with IEPs. We're also going to be looking at what are the opportunities for growth, and then organically identify, based upon need, the professional development to help our staff become even better at what they're doing to meeting the needs of our students. Superintendent Scuderi did bring up that we are experiencing staff shortages, and unfortunately that has impacted us, particularly in the area of paraprofessionals and speech and language. It's also impacted us in the area of transportation, although transportation is a lot better. The issues that we're experiencing really are with drop-off and pickup times. And what I'd like to do at this point is just acknowledge all the team members that have just worked so hard to meeting the needs of our students. And that is our paraprofessionals who provided transportation when our transportation company dropped the ball on us. I'd like to thank all SPED providers who have been working very, very hard, very diligently, district office team members, of course, our parents, and I especially want to acknowledge my previous assessor, Ms. Pam Kazi, and Assistant Superintendent Kirsten Sazo, and their leadership for putting together the CESP and the SET plan, which we're now in the process of implementing. So I apologize, Heather, I think I went over just a bit, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bains. Danielle, if I could trouble you to share, thank you so much. So we're going to move into the question and answer period of this presentation. There are a couple of different ways that you can ask your question or raise an issue or suggest a solution. You can use the raise hand feature on Zoom if you want to ask your question live, and there'll be a little bit more on that on the next slide as to where you can find those buttons. Or you can use the chat to submit your question. You can pose your question to everyone, or if you want to remain anonymous, you can send your question directly to Anna Johnson. And we're going to populate the slide deck that we've been using with your questions to help our directors see those questions to help us get answers. Next slide, please. So how to raise your hand on Zoom. If you're using a Mac or a PC, just look for the icon labeled participants at the bottom center, and you can click the button that says raise hand, or on a mobile device, look for those three little dots, click on that, and you should see a raised hand feature. You can also use the reactions button on the lower right-hand corner of your Zoom window to show fellow meeting participants that you agree with what they're saying, or to raise your hand, or just to show your support of what they're saying. Next slide, please. So a couple quick notes on the Q&A portion. You can either ask a question, or if you're making a comment or stating a problem, please, if you can, phrase that as a problem and solution pair. We're hoping to get to as many questions as possible. So if you can, please try to keep your question brief and focused. If you know specifically who you're directing your question to, please feel free to name that person. So if it's a question for Dr. Bains, please be clear on that so he knows you're posing your question to him. And lastly, please be mindful that this is a public forum. So be careful not to share too much personal information about your student or about yourself when asking a question. And I think that's it. Heather, I hope I covered everything. Please feel free to add if there's anything you think I missed.
You did, but I realized I forgot something somewhere in the middle there. I was supposed to pause, I think, after Dr. Bain spoke and allow our other AOSD leaders to just briefly introduce themselves. I'll try to kind of direct this. So Kirsten Zazo, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself real briefly, just name, title?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kirsten Zazo. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services and really happy to be here tonight and appreciative of all of the work that you guys have all done to make this happen. Thank you.
Let's see, Shamar Edwards. Shamar here.
Shamar is here. She's having some difficulty with her microphone.
No problem. Why don't you go, Yvonne, since you're up?
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm Yvonne Wright, and Director of Elementary Education.
Thank you. Dr. Vernon, whoops, sorry. Let's see, Dr. Vernon Watson?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Vernon Walton, Director of Secondary Education. Real happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. And let's see, did I get everybody there? I think I did, except Shamar. So Shamar Edwards is here. Shamar, I'm going to not get your title right if you were listening to me. Director of Equity and African American Student and Multi-Ethnic Student Achievement. Did I get that right? Somebody or close? Hopefully someone will correct that. So hopefully Shamar will be able to join us as well. But I'm going to Caroline, since we are co-moderating this portion of the Q&A session, shall we go to a live question first? Does that sound good?
Let's
All right. Nidra,
okay. Yes, there are two hands raised. So I will unmute Fred Fielding so that he can ask the first question.
Yes, hi, it's Fred Fielding and Lupe Garcia. Thank you all for being here and for getting us all together. And I very much appreciated hearing from Dr. Bains. And I guess this would be a question for him. What training is available to the general education teachers about their role in implementing an IEP, especially because we have seen a number of teachers who are in their first year of teaching and don't have as much experience with respect to special education. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. And what I can tell you is this. We are going to be providing that level of training to our new teachers, not just our new gen ed teachers, but also to our new special education teachers on their roles and responsibilities for students with IEPs. So that's one piece. The other piece that I'd like to share with you is the training for site leadership on their IEP related roles and responsibilities so that they can sustain the effort to continue to support the needs of gen ed staff in their roles and responsibilities. The third piece is that our teachers on special assignment are providing ongoing support to our new special education teachers. We can certainly look at how they could, in a different capacity, provide support to our new gen ed teachers. But specifically for gen ed teachers, we will be providing training on their roles to meet their children's needs. So that date or the initiative itself will be announced at the next steering committee meeting, which will be November the 5th at 6:30.
Thank you, Dr. Bains.
Thank you, Dr. Bains. I think we're going to take a question that we received prior to the meeting, but if you have your hand raised, please keep your hand up because we're going to come back to you right after this question. So the question is, how would a student in special education be affected in a positive or negative way when applying to a four-year college or university?
Caroline, is that question for me?
I believe so.
Okay, got it. How would a student with affected in a positive, negative way? I'm going to say that it depends. It depends. Technically speaking, support will be available to a child who has special needs going into college. There is what we call a final IEP. That final IEP is a document that outlines the needs of the child, the disabling condition, and the accommodations that the child needs going into a four-year college or even a two-year junior college. What is going to be critical for us is to ensure that the child is prepared, understands how to access the four-year institution or a two-year junior college, and equipping the young adult, I should say, to self-advocate when entering their institutions of higher learning. So that's what comes to my mind. The other thing is that's really important is how the child sees himself, how the young adult sees him or herself. I think it's going to be important for us as a school district to ensure that the self-confidence, the self-esteem of our students is high so that they do feel adequate in maneuvering institutions of higher learning. And when I talk about self-esteem, I'm talking about equipping you with the knowledge and the information you need to access. When you have that information, then you can confidently ask all the right questions. I think it's also going to be very important for students to have a sense of continued connection with their school district so that they don't feel lost in the shuffle. So that's what I'm thinking.
Dr. Bains, if I can also add just some technical aspects to this. It's important for families to know that colleges can't ask about disability. And so it really is the advocating of students is really important, that the students actually share what their disability is with colleges so that colleges can help support the student in getting the accommodations that they need. IEPs or colleges don't accept what traditionally in a K-12 program is called an IEP. So it's just important for families to know that you do have to advocate, and part of the transition planning for our students when transitioning out of high school is really working on how to advocate, who to go to, and how to make sure that the supports are in place.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to be a third voice in the answer, but I think what Kirsten said is important. I mean, both of those streams of information are important, but it really is a personal family decision. There are supports for students with disabilities at colleges, but it's entirely up to the family whether they disclose that disability on the application form and even after the student's enrolled in a college. So it is important for families to know what is available to make sure potentially the supports available at that college are in line with what students need. But it's important to underscore what Kirsten just said. They're not allowed to ask.
Great, thank you for that. I'm gonna, Nidra, do we have another live question?
Yes, we do have another live question. So Susie Clement, if you could unmute, you're up next.
Okay, thanks. Thanks everybody for being here, and Dr. Bains in particular, this is for you, and I will try to be brief, but I do need to give a little bit of background to my question. My son Lucian is a 14-year-old non-speaking autistic. When he entered AUSD as a preschooler, he was assumed to be severely intellectually disabled and was placed in a mod severe special day class. For many years, Lucian had no meaningful way to communicate, but at 11 years old, he finally found a method that works for him, and he's now able to tell us everything that he's thinking. And we have learned the very painful lesson that almost everything we thought we knew about his disability was wrong. When he would stim or wander around the room, we thought it meant that he wasn't interested, attending, or understanding what was happening, but nothing could be further from the truth. We now know that he experiences a profound brain-body disconnect and that his body literally does not obey instructions from his brain. He is constantly struggling for control over his actions, but he is always, always listening, observing, and learning, and he is in fact incredibly smart. Despite Lucian demonstrating his intelligence to his school team, his academic program remained essentially the same, and his frustration with being quote unquote treated like a baby, as he puts it, subjected to ABCs and counting for years on end, contributed to intense self-injurious behavior. We were forced to find a different school setting. That was about 18 months ago, and I'm happy to say he's thriving in his new school. His intelligence is recognized and he's doing grade level diploma track schoolwork. But I know there are many non-speaking AUSD students who are just like Lucian and who are severely underestimated and whose needs are not being met in the special day classes. I believe that there is a deeply rooted culture of ableism and exclusion with regards to AUSD's SDCs, particularly with regards to its non-speakers, and the idea that non-speaking equals non-thinking. This is one of the most marginalized groups within a generally marginalized population, and I would like to open a dialogue about what the district can do to deepen its understanding and support of these students, possibly beginning with a concerted effort to educate staff and shift mindsets about the nature of non-speaking autism and the potential of non-speakers. My question is, will you commit to continuing this dialogue and aiming higher for non-speaking AUSD students? Thank you.
You have my full commitment, Susie, but I want to apologize to you first.
You can apologize to Lucian.
No, yes, for such a horrible experience. And I truly appreciate you sharing. And I'm very, very sorry that happened. But you have my commitment. I am going to reach out to you, Susie, because I want to talk further. Because I want others to hear your voice, your child's voice, and your experience, so that we can all learn and we can all benefit, so that there is a deeper understanding and awareness to the needs of all of our students, especially those who cannot advocate for themselves. So I will be reaching out to you.
Right, thank you.
Okay, Tamara, if you could unmute, since there's only one other hand raised, we'll move to that question, and that is Tamara. So if you could unmute and ask your question, thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm sorry, this is my third Zoom of the day this evening. And my question is, how the district could support our ELD students who are also have IEPs. My belief is that at this moment, all these ELD students, they have ELD support and then IEP support, but it's not integrated. And I think it's very important for them. I love the idea also about the IEP survey for parents, like an evaluation after an IEP. I hope that evaluation could be maybe a Google form that could go to directly to the district. That will be amazing. And the last thing is how you are planning to provide some training about the rights of parents for parents. I don't believe a brochure of their rights is enough for them. Bunch of questions for everyone.
Okay, Tamara, that's That's a lot of questions, but they're very good questions, and I want to thank you for asking them. Let me begin with the ELD piece and students with disabilities. What immediately comes to my mind is, number one, a child has a disability. Secondly, they have English as a second language. Third, they're learning new content. That's a triple issue that our students with IEPs who are English learners have to contend with on a daily basis. So in my experience, Tamara, what has worked is the ongoing relationship, collaboration between Gen Ed and special education in crafting the language objectives that are also aligned with the IEP goals and objectives, that are also aligned with the lesson objective, so that all arrows are pointing in one direction for a child. I'm going to tell you, Tamara, at this point, I don't know if all those arrows are pointing in the same direction. I don't know at this point. But I can tell you that that is the direction we will be heading in when it comes to meeting the needs of EL students with IEPs. And I hope that doesn't sound too general, and I'm not trying to be general with that, but philosophically, all those arrows have to be pointing in the same direction.
Yes, I don't know if there is, we are in the same direction right now. It will be great to have kind of ELAC meeting, but just for the kids who have, families who have IEPs.
Yes, it's in my experience in working with English learner students with IEPs, I can tell you that it's the data monitoring, it's the follow-up on the progress towards the what are called linguistically appropriate IEP goals, the follow-up and the monitoring of those, coupled with the conversations with the classroom teachers, that's critical to this. It all goes back to dialogue, discussion, engagement, and follow through data. And if we're not looking at the data, then we're not going to be able to see whether or not our children with IEPs who are EL are making the progress that they should be making. So that is very important to me, and I can assure you that I, along with secondary director Dr. Walton and elementary director Ms. Wright, will be working on, and as we make progress, we will be reporting out that progress. I do want to address, Tamara, your question regarding the parent survey. All the information from the surveys will be coming back to me. I will be able to see how each of our parents have responded. If any of our parents has had a negative experience, I will follow up. I will communicate with my colleagues, Ms. Wright and Dr. Walton, site administrators, because this is a quality control issue for us, and we want to make sure all of our IEPs are done the way they're supposed to be.
And the last was the training for parents' rights and on special education.
Yes, so that is, I'm going to go back to what I had shared in the presentation, Tamara, and that is the parent evenings, the parent nights that we're going to look to schedule, where any new parent with a child who has an IEP will be able to go for additional support, assistance. The Parent Resource Network, a concept that I have to acknowledge Caroline Broussard for surfacing this. And this is a network in which we can invite parents to participate, where they can get additional support and clarification on parent rights. Our staff should be available. I'm available. No parent should leave any IEP not knowing what their rights are. So we're not there yet, Tamara, but we want to create multiple opportunities for parents to get clarification on any questions they have regarding their rights.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Tamara, I just want to add in that one of the things that we are going to start doing, we've heard from many of our families that just navigating the first parts of an IEP, right? So, you know, the first assessment, the process, how does this work, is really challenging. And so we're going to start putting in quarterly family events where any family who is starting the assessment process can come and participate in a sort of a question and answer and support session for parents on just how to navigate that initial process. And, you know, from what does it mean to have a case manager? What does it mean to have support providers? You know, what does the principal do with a student if a student has an IEP? What does the general education teacher do? So just sort of some of those basic pieces, because it's tough to navigate. And really going to use the School Smart, which you participate in, the School Smart structure to help that process.
That is beautiful. Thank you.
So, hi, everybody, it's Heather. I just want to get to our next question. I just should let you guys know we have so many questions. We are going to try to see if we can't get as many as possible answered here. This is our next one. Are there resources to reimburse parents for outside services incurred to deal with loss of learning, outside educational services?
Are there resources to reimburse parents for outside services? Here's what we're doing. We're actually gearing up to provide support to our students that have incurred learning loss. And our program manager, Ms. Jonathan Stanley, is taking the lead on that. In arranging for tutorial support based upon need in the area of English language arts and mathematics. And a notification has been sent out to families that would like to participate. And we're going to be holding varsity tutoring on 8-week cycles. So the tutoring will be going through 8-week cycles. And she will be the point person for that. Again, her name is Ms. Jonathan Stanley. She is a program manager for the special education division. With respect to reimbursement to families, I'm going to say that that really is a conversation that I'd like to have individually, that there is not a general policy on reimbursement to families for learning loss. So if a parent has a question related to reimbursement, I'd be more than happy to speak with any parent. All you have to do is just reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to review your individual case and see exactly what the status is.
Could I just add one thing to that, Heather? At the top, we mentioned the learning recovery dollars that were set aside for special education. And I know our staff's going to be having more broad conversations. I don't know that will ultimately take the form of individual reimbursements, but it may be there are patterns of needs that we see out in the community that could be addressed somewhat with this additional funding. As I said, north of $600,000.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bains and Superintendent Scuderi. We're going to queue up the next question, which is, how are you addressing the district-wide shortage of paraprofessional support? Our IEP states that a para be present to help our child access their education. We are in week 10 of school, and we still do not have consistent para support in the classroom for our child. Are there financial incentives to hire and keep these essential staff in our schools? So think Dr. Bains, if you can start us off on that one, that would be really great.
Great. Clearly, there is a shortage of staff, as Superintendent Scuderi mentioned in his opening remarks, not just with our paraprofessionals, but in other very important positions across the district. At this point, I can tell you that we are short 17 paraprofessionals, which is impacting the needs of particular students. And I do want to apologize to our community for that. It's very, very unfortunate that it's happening. We are aggressively trying to recruit as many paraprofessional support staff, but it seems that the need is far greater than the supply. We are working with a number of outside companies in addition to posting internally, and we celebrate anytime we are able to secure a paraprofessional. That said, what I am looking at is, aside from varsity tutoring, to supporting the needs of students in reading, English language arts and mathematics. What I'm also looking at is a program, a tutorial support for classwork for our students that have been negatively impacted due to a lack of para support. The details to this I will be sharing at the next steering committee meeting on November the 5th at 6:30. There's a lot of moving parts to that tutorial support for classwork. So the plan and additional details will be shared at that time, but we are moving in that direction. So I hope that answers that particular part of the question.
Caroline, can I add one small thing to that? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Please.
Okay. I just want to say that we have not ruled out some sort of incentive. We're also looking at shortages that are particularly impactful in the area of substitute teachers. What we have found in talking to some of our neighboring districts, where, again, sticking with that substitute example, is whether or not their increase in daily rates on substitutes have actually increased the pools. That hasn't been the case so far. Some of that is COVID related. And I don't know if the hesitance of some of what we're hearing from former substitutes to come back to classes is being replicated on the paraprofessional side relative to kind of concerns about COVID or coming back into elementary classrooms where students are not yet eligible for the vaccine. I am hoping that as pediatric vaccines become available, that will help with part of the problem. We haven't ruled out some kind of stipend or bonus or incentive in a short-term way for paraprofessionals or substitutes. We're not quite there yet, and I'm unclear whether or not that will ultimately have an impact, but we haven't taken it off the table.
Thanks for sharing, Superintendent. Let's get the next question up. All right, my son has not yet received any services this school year. Who should I contact regarding this?
Contact me, reach out to me.
Okay, Dr. Bains, could you stick your, while we get to the next question, why don't you stick your email address in the chat? All right, Caroline?
Thanks, Heather. Next question is, I have some feedback about the access to the AUSD special education information on the website and other aspects of the parent experience. Is there somewhere or someone I can follow up with? And that question is for you, Dr. Bains.
Yes, reach out to our special education coordinator, Dr. Betty Lynn. She oversees our departmental website. I will post her email in the chat.
I also want to add on to this is that part of the first listening session around communication is going to be broken into different types of communication. So one of them actually being the website, the school communication, so that we can really hear from families about the different pieces of communication. So it's not the like back and forth communication, but it's how they get communication as well. So that first listening session is going to be really important. I would say the outside website too is something that I would be happy also, and I'll put my name in the chat, to support with as well, because I know that I'm working with all of the Ed Services departments, all of Ed Services to really help our websites be more navigable for our families. And thank you, Dr. Bains, for putting my email in there as well.
Kirsten, can we get the next question, please? All right. Far too many families are forced to take legal action against AUSD when appropriate placement options are not available within the district. Families are rarely provided any support to find NPS options, and NPS placement is not offered without legal action, even when all involved in the process are well aware of the inadequacy of AUSD options. How can we change this approach and take better advantage of area NPS programs to support kids with unique needs that are not well served by AUSD? Dr. Bains?
What I can share with you is my experiences so far in Alameda Unified. There have been opportunities where the district members of the IEP team do believe that we do not have the appropriate placement, and we've made recommendations for a non-public school. There have been opportunities where in an IEP team, we do not believe that a non-public school is appropriate, and we've made recommendations for a residential treatment facility, sometimes out of state. And there are sometimes opportunities when we believe that the programs we have to offer within the district are appropriate. And our parent members of the IEP team hold a different belief. In the circumstance where we do believe that we do not have the option within the district, we will actively work with our parents, as we have in cases, to identify a non-public school that matches the need of particular students. So we have done that, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Bains. Can we queue up the next question, please? We don't have any hands raised, so we're going to just keep taking questions that we've received in advance. Thank you. So this question comes from the Alameda Mosaic event last week, our Meet the Directors event. And it's a two-part question. The first part is, what is the role and responsibility of principals in supporting students with IEPs and 504s at their school site? And the second part is, do you support principals in developing their capacity to support students with 504 plans and IEPs on their campuses? And if so, please describe what kind of support you provide. So I'd love to hear Dr. Bains and also our directors of elementary and secondary give their thoughts on these two questions. So why don't we start with part one and start with Dr. Bains, if that's okay.
Of course. The role of our principals with IEPs and 504s is primary. As school leaders, we want our principals and associate principals to take a very active role in ensuring that IEPs and 504 plans are being followed, are being implemented. IEP meetings and 504 meetings are being held on time, and that the information within those meetings is understandable, is accessible to our parents. Not only that, but we also want to make sure that the IEPs are being implemented, and the accommodations in a 504 plan are also implemented. And that is done through daily classroom walkabouts that is done through periodic checks with classroom teachers, asking about the progress of students with IEPs and 504s, and problem solving if a teacher has a challenge with implementing the accommodations in a 504 plan or an IEP. So in general, they're very responsible, and there are multiple monitoring responsibilities for 504 and IEPs. I could go on, but perhaps Dr. Walton and Ms. Wright would like to share.
Before they do, just really quickly, just because I want to give just a quick on number 2, just because being new, both Dr. Walton and Ms. Wright don't have this context. So for all of our principals, we do training around 504 and IEPs multiple times during the year, and they're embedded into our principal training calendar. The role of the principal is integral in making sure that the master schedule is done so that students can access the services in a way that doesn't take them away from their tier 1, so their first instruction inside the classroom. They are also integral in making sure that there is an IEP calendar in which the right people are at the IEP at the right time. They are also integral in making sure that the types of services are appropriate based on what's happening at the school. So there's a lot of different pieces, and all of our principals went through a really robust training with our SELPA director, Katie Babcock, on all of the different elements of what need to be in place for them to be strong advocates, and also for them to be inclusive in the way that they think about all of our students being general education students first, and how they embed and tier services throughout the district.
Just to piggyback on what Ms. Zazo shared, as I shared earlier in the presentation that I made, we are going to have beginning mid-November until the end of November, site-based special education team trainings on roles and responsibilities as a follow-up to the training that Ms. Zazo just mentioned, to ensure a continuation of responsibility and oversight for 504s and IEPs.
And I would add a secondary director, part of my responsibility is to ensure that principals are understanding students with the IEPs and the timelines. Also understanding what accommodations need to be students need to be having in the classroom. The teachers are understanding those accommodations and making sure that they're delivered. And walking through classrooms and looking at how paraprofessionals are providing services in the classroom and looking at the holistic program. So that's my responsibility as secondary director is to oversee the implementation of the IEPs and support the principal in making sure that these accommodations are being met.
So I would just like to add that in addition to all those things, that the principal, one of the main roles of the principal is to know all of the students in the school. The principal is responsible for educating all students in the school and knowing your students with disabilities, just like you know all students. Ensuring that the general education teacher is responsible also for implementing that IEP. Knowing the IEP goals and objectives of the special education students, and knowing that they're responsible just as much as the special education teacher is for implementing those goals and objectives, and really understanding that. So that when the principal is attending an IEP meeting, they know the student well and are able to participate and give information about that student. Knowing your students well is a mark of a good principal. So I think knowing that practice, but also communicating to their staff so the staff knows the processes of the special education as well. So just adding that piece.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you to all of you. Let's see here. Oh, looks like Nita, do we have any
We
hands
do.
raised?
We have one hand raised. Anna Johnson.
All right, Anna, can you, oh, you got her?
Yep.
Thanks.
One of the things that has come up in the CCA stakeholder meetings this fall was that a template of all the required components of an EdPsych evaluation and report are going to be implemented at the district. And so my question is, can that be made available to parents and when?
Yes, of course. It should not be a secret, Anna. So it's public knowledge as to what the components are of a required assessment. So let me take a deep dive into that. I don't think that would be an issue. We can certainly make those available.
Thank you. Yeah, I would add, it's not widely known among parents that a classroom observation would be a required component of an EdPsych report.
Correct.
And it's not necessarily known by parents, especially with the first time evaluation, that they would be interviewed by the EdPsych prior to their first IEP meeting. And that the contents of that interview would be part of the report. So knowing those components, especially as parents, can at least get everybody on the same page of what required components they're expecting. They can check it off too.
Sure, absolutely.
Anna, that's actually really helpful also when we're doing this, the quarterly trainings for families, to include that as part of the quarterly training, so that they know sort of through the assessment process, what actually is being assessed, how is it being assessed, and how do they participate and what should they expect. So I think that there's an accountability piece to that, where it holds everybody accountable for those things actually happening. So thank you for raising that, and we will include that in our quarterly meetings with families.
Okay, and it would be great if you could just put a timeline on that, so when we can get that out to families, because I know that assessments are happening now and going forward, and we're probably, I don't know if the district is playing catch up from school site closure, but thank you. I won't take any more time. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we're queuing up our next question.
You went on mute.
Sorry about that. I didn't do that. When will the post IEP survey be made available to families?
I wish it was available now. The post IEP survey will be available to parents. Let me see, 1 second. I'm just checking the date. It will be available to parents by November the 19th.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Bains. We can move on to the next question. Heather, did you want to take this one?
Sorry about that. What is the intersection between race and special education, and how can parents of students of color with students that qualify for special education leverage support? And I would think Dr. Bains, maybe you could start with that one, but anybody can jump in on that as well.
The intersection between race and SPED, and how can parents of color with students that qualify for SPED leverage support? What comes to what I'm going to say is, the more knowledge you have, the more information you have, the more questions you ask about your child's disability, about the programs and services that are available. Are they working? Who's in charge? Who's doing what? Where's the evidence? The more information you have, the more you're going to be able to advocate for your child, is definitely what comes to my mind. Yeah, that's what comes to my mind. And I definitely think reaching out to the site administration, I feel reaching out to the district office if you don't have your questions or your concerns addressed. That to me is how you can leverage support to make sure that the needs of your child are being met. But I will say the first place to begin, the very first place to begin is with the child's special education providers and with the child's general education teachers. That's really where it begins. It has to begin at the site level. And if it doesn't happen, that's where I think working with district office is going to be very, very important. But the foundation to all of that, I really feel, is knowing as much as you can, asking as many questions as you need to in order to fully understand how to navigate special education. And that's where the Parent Resource Network, I feel, is going to be very, very important. That's where the listening sessions that we're going to be holding on a monthly basis are going to be very, very important, so that you can stay empowered and equipped with everything you need in order to advocate for your child.
And I will say, from a peer support standpoint, I will point to the two groups that are co-hosting this event between ASPED families and Alameda Mosaic. There's a fairly deep bench of families that have a variety of experiences having navigated special education in this district, most of whom are prepared to support our fellow families in this community with help, anything from ranging from, IEPs to questions you might have. We can happy to share our experiences with you to help you navigate this process. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Often the culture of the IEP team fails to meaningfully include the parent as a real member of the team. I have some simple suggestions for changing this culture. Number one, include all members of the team in the scheduling, i.e. don't decide the date and then ask the parent last. Number two, share all draft documents with the parent before the meeting that are shared with other members of the team. And three, don't assemble before the meeting, letting the parent in last, whether in Zoom or in person. In general, please treat parents as you would any colleague you intend to collaborate with in a meaningful way.
I think those are excellent points. I don't disagree with anything. And thank you for sharing that, because what I'm reflecting on are questions in the post-IEP survey that captures this kind of information. To me, going to an IEP is like going to a physician that you're waiting for test results on, and you've been waiting for a while, and there's an anticipation. And there has to be a level of courtesy and dignity, professionalism, not to imply that that isn't happening, but that needs to be at the forefront. And I definitely welcome that, and we will be working on that, again, based upon the feedback and the results we get from the post-IEP survey, and even the listening sessions. So yes, I support that and look forward to implementing that.
Thanks, Dr. Bains. I think that I just commented in the chat. I think that experience that was just shared is a fairly common one from talking to parents. So just wanted to kind of reiterate that. Do we have any other Do we have any? I know we're literally running down the last wire here, but is there? I saw a quick question in the chat about. Well, here, let's do this one. I saw a quick question, Dr. Bains, in the chat about when the IEP tracker might be available. That might be a quick question for you to answer. I'm going to read this one here. I hear a lot of frustrations from parents trying to get their kids evaluated for IEP or 504. Parents have left the district because of their frustrations or just given up. Are there plans to streamline or improve the process so that it's easier for parents, students, and teachers?
Absolutely, that is a top priority when it comes to the priorities that I shared at the beginning of today's town hall meeting. I want to make sure that all compliance requirements are implemented and timelines followed. No parent should be frustrated with the IEP process. If any parent is frustrated, you can easily reach out to me, just reach out to the site administrators for support and assistance, and you will get that assistance. Definitely let me know. I want to know what's happening, and use my staff to help alleviate your frustrations. But that's an immediate response as we build our system to support the needs of students. Again, I'm going to go back to the training that I mentioned for site leadership teams, training for our new special education teachers on their roles and responsibilities in this, and also providing refresher trainings for our veteran staff on roles and responsibilities, especially when it comes to just meeting basic required timelines and responsibilities in special education. It's a work in progress, in other words. But if you're stuck, folks, reach out and we will help you.
I want to also just add in that I think that there is also a place that we really want to start supporting families in understanding that the goal is to really help students be in what the law refers to as the least restrictive environment. So we want to be able to try interventions before jumping to the assessment process. It doesn't mean that we're trying to stop the assessment process, but we want students to have early intervention before going through a whole assessment for 60 days without having that intervention ahead of time. And I think that we have to do a better job of explaining why we want to try things before going straight into an assessment. And there are times where, you know, we need to do an assessment. Assessment needs to happen quickly, and we do follow the timeline. But we do also want to, you know, work with families to make sure that we're doing other interventions before jumping straight to assessment, because, you know, it's important to try some things before we jump into a special education assessment. And we need to do a better job of explaining the why behind that. It's not that we're trying to keep families from being assessed or from services. We want the services to actually happen before you have an IEP. We want students to be able to have those services ahead of time before having to qualify for special education.
All right, on that note, Kirsten, thank you. It is 8:01. I just want to make sure, I think we still probably have some questions that were not able to be answered. I'm not 100% sure, but we are going to do our best to record those questions, see if we can get just some quick answers to them and report them back out either on our website, and I will, we can communicate about that, Alameda Mosaic, and I know they have some questions too, so we'll sort of figure this out. Thank you all for joining tonight. Every parent, every question, every administrator who jumped in and answered questions. I really, really, really appreciate it. We really, really appreciate it. I wanted to just again thank our crew here working behind the scenes to get these questions and everything written up. Caroline Broussard, Danielle Poole, Elizabeth Tran Wong, Nidra Barnes LaRue, Susan Davis. Also, it's been a pleasure. These things are always interesting and informative, and I think help build our community, build our knowledge, help us work together. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Caroline, did you have any parting words you wanted to share before we sign off?
Nope, same appreciation for the senior leadership for making time this evening. Really appreciate you all. And to our SPED community for joining us, and community partners and other AUSD partners. Really appreciate you all being here tonight. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. And Anna, Anna Johnson, I think I forgot to name you too. Thanks. Thanks to all of you guys. Really appreciate it.
And
Everybody
Elizabeth.
have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night all.